Hi, welcome. This is Cambridge House Live. My name's Jonathan Roth. I'm joined now by Jeff Berwick from the Dollar Vigilante. Jeff, thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I want to start out the global economy. We look like we're in some serious trouble with what's happened here over the last few days especially. Where are we at? I mean, it seems like we're in a really dangerous phase here.
Yeah, we are. We've been in a dangerous phase since 2008. George Soros recently said something I agreed with, shockingly, because I don't normally agree with George Soros. He said that the financial system died in 2008, and all we're doing right now is just keeping it alive through basically inflation, sort of like a Frankenstein economy at this point. And your next guest is coming on here, Doug Casey, has also said that we've been in sort of the eye of the hurricane since 2008, and I believe that as well. And he's been saying, and I believe as well, that we're starting to come out of that eye now. We're coming into the back wall of the hurricane, and this one's going to be way worse, and it could end with the total collapse of the financial and monetary system.
So you think that's potentially where it's going?
Definitely. However, I think we do have a couple years left. I think what's going to happen is these politicians are going to continue to inflate. That's their only option now. There's too much government debt. The U.S. has $17 trillion, $16 trillion in government debt. Total debt and liabilities is $75 trillion. That's $250,000 per person in the U.S. and only federal government debt and liabilities. So there's no way to pay that off. And the total debt amount is getting so large now that if the interest rates rise even to 5 or 10%, most of the income of the tax theft revenue of the government will go just to pay interest rates alone. That's the reason why we got out of that last one. The last time we were in a period like this was 1979, 1980, and the only way to get out of it was to raise rates. This time that's not an option. So the only thing they can do is to inflate, try to fool people into thinking there's a recovery or some sort of normalcy for the next couple of years until eventually all the fiat currencies hyperinflate and they all collapse.
Okay, so I could talk a lot about the U.S. political situation and all that, and we do want to get to that eventually. But given what you just said, where does the wise investor park their money then?
It's never been more difficult in human history. We're under attack by these governments. They're making it almost impossible to save. You cannot save, which is actually the fundamental thing of any economy is savings. That's how growth happens. That's not what Paul Krugman or Ben Bernanke believe. They believe that savings are bad and that we have to get rid of them, and that's why they're destroying the current economy that we have. But people do need to save, and because you can't right now, the only way to really keep your assets is to try to put them in something that Ben Bernanke can't print. So anything hard. Perfect example would be gold or silver, precious metals. That's always been a great place to put your money in times like these. But anything hard, put into foreign real estate or anything that central bankers can't inflate away is the way to go. And another thing that's really important too is, for example, if you're Canadian and you have all your assets in Canada, get some of them outside of the country. As these Western governments continue to collapse, as their tax revenues continue to decline, they will go after more and more of the citizens' money. And they're already looking in the U.S. at taking away the IRAs, or at least taxing them. This is a completely normal thing that happens during these sort of crises. And it's very important to get a lot of your assets outside of the country so your own government can't just completely confiscate them.
Right, I got you. Okay. Now, in terms of what's happening, you say, obviously, we could hit a financial wall here at any point. You're an anarchist, and which is, in itself, there's a really interesting story there. But usually societies don't change unless there's incredible turmoil and upheaval, and let's face it, war. And do you see that on the horizon? I mean, I've read a lot of your stuff, and it seems like there's an underlying theme here that we might be entering a period of real chaos.
Yes, I believe we will enter into a period of chaos, but not necessarily war. I've said this ever since the internet came around. I said this in 1997. I said we will never have large global wars anymore because a lot of wars are based on propaganda, and the internet gets around that propaganda. You look at what happened in Iraq, that was all based on, they have weapons of mass destruction. It's almost always based on lies. But thanks to the internet and thanks to alternative media, we can sort out these lies and get to the bottom of it. And even if they do end up going to war, very quickly people can realize that those people they don't hate us. The Iraq people don't hate us. Afghanistan people don't hate us. They don't hate us for our freedom, certainly, because we don't have any anymore. And so there's I don't believe we're going to head towards war here. I think we're headed towards a collapse. I think it will be chaotic. I don't think it necessarily has to last more than a year or two of a fair amount of chaos. I don't think we'll see a Mad Max situation with Mel Gibson roaming the countryside, terrorizing people like he does today in Malibu. But
yeah, no doubt.
I don't think we'll see it on a widespread basis. I think thanks to the internet and more people every day are waking up to what's going on. as long as the governments stay out of the way and allow the free market to rebuild, we can be very quickly on our way. Just like the Soviet Union. It had a collapse. A couple of years was not a great place to be. And now you look at all the rich Russians traveling the world. It's, I live in Mexico, and one of the biggest tourist groups coming to Mexico are Russians. They're all rich Russians, and they've rebuilt very quickly as long as the government stays out of the way.
I mean, with their fair share of problems.
Sure,
Yeah.
there's no place that's perfect at all. And Russia was not an anarchic state at all,
Sure.
but it was a lot freer than it was prior to the collapse of the communist days.
Granted, for sure. Now, Europe itself is in serious trouble. Depending on what happens here, where do you see that situation going? At least in the short term.
I believe that they're not going to allow the euro to die. Not this way. It will die, but they won't allow it to die with Greece leaving and with all the pigs leaving. I believe that they'll do the same thing all politicians and central bankers always do and bail everything out and basically inflate their way out of it, which will turn into a hyperinflation. So I believe that
Zimbabwe style, or
yes, all
you
of
think
them.
so?
Yes, absolutely. There's no other option at this point. They either have to basically let it die right now, or let it die in a few years of hyperinflation. Although other countries, the Western countries in Europe, are almost as bad as the U.S. in their financial situation. And again, if interest rates rise, all of their tax revenues will just go to interest payments alone. So they do have an option. They could let that all die and let the government debt all collapse, and let the government actually collapse. So that a lot of the socialist things they've been doing would all have to just be washed away. But because they're politicians and because there's democracy, they have to try to at least keep a thin veil of keeping the voters happy. So their only real option is just to inflate it away, and it'll eventually turn into hyperinflation within a few years.
So I hear what you're saying here, and to be frank, it's somewhat of a depressing picture. What does this look like, the final picture here, in terms of the financial ruin and chaos? What does it look like for the average guy, living in a suburb of Vancouver? What is his or her life? What's it going to look like?
First of all, I want to say this isn't pessimistic. It's actually optimistic. All of the wars, the World War I, World War II, all the wars of the last century were all enabled by central banking. Central banking is not capitalism. It's actually a tenet of communism. It's a horrible, horrible thing. All it does is ruin economies and impoverish people. So it's very good those are going to go away. And governments,
so in a way, this is a purge that needs to happen.
Yeah, totally needs to happen. And if we can allow it to happen, and we can get through the chaos that will happen in the meantime, we'll move on to peace and prosperity like we've never known it.
Okay, but that period of chaos, spell it out for me.
It's going to be difficult. If you're quite poor, don't worry, because you're already poor, you're still going to be poor. Right. So it's not going to be too bad. Yeah. If you're rich and you're smart, you put a lot of your assets into hard assets, and you can probably survive with a fair amount of your wealth. The real trouble is going to be for the middle class, who don't have a lot of assets, who are mostly in debt. But that debt as well will get washed away in all of this. So there's good and bad sides to it. The really important thing is to realize it's going to happen and to prepare. So for example, just have some extra food in your house. The last time we went through 2008, we almost, like George Soros said, that was pretty much the end of the financial system. They kept it alive a little bit longer, but food transportation systems all stopped because no one trusted the bank debt of the transporters. Right. So with all of our food coming from thousands of miles away, we could actually see the grocery store shelves empty within a matter of days. So just be prepared, get some extra food, keep some gold or silver in the house or things that are good assets, even keep some cash in the house, because eventually bank machines will stop working and that sort of a thing. It sounds really crazy, but it's going to happen, and the reason you don't hear about this on the mainstream media is because they don't want to panic people, and actually they're part of the system, so they don't want anyone to even know that this is possible, because it will actually make it happen faster the more people know about it. But it's going to happen, so just prepare for it, and if you're prepared, I think everyone will do okay. You just got to be prepared for it.
Now, you're a supporter of Ron Paul. He clearly he isn't going to win the nomination for president from the Republican Party, and he's stated that he's basically going to ride off into the sunset now. I mean, he's becoming an older man. Who's there to assume his mantle in the United States?
Well, you did say I'm an anarchist, so it does sound funny that I support a politician. I don't support him as a politician, I support him as a person. I think he's a principled man who believes a lot in liberty, and that's great. I don't think it's over for him, though. The mainstream media has been reporting that it's over for him, but they're trying to get rid of him. When we see this GOP election in Tampa, they have ways, there's enough support. He has massive amount of support. They've been basically filling ballot boxes with incorrect votes and all that kind of stuff, and doing everything in the media to write him off. I don't think it's over for him. I think he has a decent chance of winning still the GOP nomination. Now, what happens after that, I don't know. He goes up against Barack Obama, the Prince of Peace, Nobel Peace Prize winner, who's the drone bomber, and that'll be a tough one. And then even beyond that, he'll probably have an incredibly hard time instituting anything he wants to do against all those congressmen and senators who are all in the pockets of all the companies and corporations and the whole lobby industry. So I don't have a great amount of hope that Ron Paul's going to change the U.S. And actually, it'd almost be better if he didn't get elected, because if he gets elected and then it all falls apart, they'll blame it on liberty.
Right. Interesting. Okay. Now, you checked out a life in Canada. There's an interesting story, though. Folks can go online to read more about that. Fascinating story there. But you moved to Mexico. And look, everything we see in the news about Mexico is not positive. We see a lot of, frankly, gruesome things. And you said something to me off camera before we started in terms of the cultural heritage of Mexico that maybe plays into that. Why don't you walk me through that?
Yeah, no, I moved to Mexico. It's much more better lifestyle, more free lifestyle down there, and it's nothing like what Canadians and Americans are told on TV. That's a lot of it's sensationalistic, and what we were talking about off camera was you often see headless bodies. So if there was 5 people who were killed in Mexico today, that would not be headline news. But if there are 5 headless bodies found in Mexico today, that's headline news. But a lot of people need to realize that's a little bit of part of the Aztec culture down there. That's just sort of what they do. It's gory and gruesome and terrible, but when they do want to kill somebody, they chop their heads off, and it's just too bad that a lot of people let that scare them too much. You know, I came up here to Vancouver, and the headlines on the newspaper are the exact same headlines as they are down in Mexico. Another gangster was killed over the horrible, horrible drug war that has gone on for 40 years, and it's actually a war on people, a war on freedom. And it's the exact same thing that's going on up here. I was at a bar, and there was police officers actually inside the bar with a computer. I don't know exactly what they were doing, but they were like looking at people and taking their pictures and putting in the computer. That's all East Germany type stuff, all caused by this drug war. Same thing's happening down in Mexico. We need to legalize all plants. They're just plants. They're dried flowers, marijuana, cocaine. They're just plants. Legalize it all, and all of that stuff goes away.
Now, you recently wrote a really interesting op-ed talking about how beautiful barbed wire is. Why is barbed wire beautiful?
Yeah, I was walking around a neighborhood I live in Acapulco, Mexico, and it's beautiful. It's all quite nice villas, but everyone has a barbed wire or usually electric fence. And I had an American friend visit, and he said, I hadn't seen an electric fence in a while, especially at a house, and it got me to thinking about it. And yeah, I think it's really great. People take on their own protection there, whereas up in Canada, the U.S., it's all socialized protection, and it doesn't really work very well at all. As anyone who's ever called 911 knows, like Flavor Flav and Public Enemy, they show up 20 minutes later. That's not going to help if there's a guy in your house with a knife or a gun, and people need to take their own protection into their own hands. All of this socialization of things are terrible. Collectivism is terrible. It causes nothing but problems. Put barbed wire around your house if you have to. You know, in the U.S. right now, the number one thing you really need to keep out of your house are the police. They go from door to door looking for drugs, again, the war on drugs, and put up some barbed wire, put up some electric fence. I think it's beautiful because it really means self-dependence, it means independence, and it doesn't mean that you're actually, because when you have a socialized police force, what you're saying is you want to steal money from everybody, put it all into a pot, and use that to do the policing. But that's already one form of theft. So you want to, because you think there's theft involved, you want to protect yourself from theft, you're going to steal money from other people to pay for your own protection. It's just 2 forms of theft in one. And the more that people protect themselves, and again, up here in Canada, they don't even have a lot of handguns and stuff like that. I think it's great. Everyone should have some sort of self-protection and be a much safer place. There would hardly be any criminal activity. There's never been a shooting spree at a gun range, for example. The more people can protect themselves.
I would love to. There's so many issues you just laid on the table right there. I'd love to jump down each one, but we don't have enough time. So, final question for you. We're here at the Cambridge House show. A lot of junior miners here, obviously. A lot of investors looking where to, park their money, move their money out. Is a good time to buy. What to do? If you were looking as an investor to get into the junior market right now, is this a good time to buy?
Oh, we've hardly had a better time to buy. The last time we had a chance like this was 2008, after that last financial collapse. The valuations of many of these companies here are incredibly low right now. If you had any thought, and I actually believe we're going to have a bubble in the gold stocks. I think we're going to have a bubble in gold and in the gold stocks built up by all the hyperinflation by all these the Western countries.
Do you think it's begun already, or it's
started?
Yeah.
You look at gold. It was $250 10 years ago, and now it's $1,500. So it's definitely shown in gold. It has not picked up at all in these miners yet, and I think that's the next stage. Now, here's the important thing: don't put all your money into these miners. These are highly risky things, but put 10, 20, max 30% of your portfolio into these stocks, these kind of things can go up thousands of percent. They did in the 1970s, 1980s, the last time we went through this, and they're almost like lottery tickets, but it's definitely worth owning a few of them, and being smart about which ones to own is the second reason why you'd want to come to a Cambridge conference and talk to all the management of all these companies.
Are there any particular jurisdictions that you're really excited about?
My big thing is political diversification. So I never want to own more gold stocks than one or two in any one country, because you never know what's going to happen. Any country could confiscate gold mines at any point, especially as things get worse and worse. And so it's really important to just have as many as you can, different countries. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Okay. Well, listen, Jeff, I wish we had way more time. There's so many more things to talk about, but I appreciate your time.
Oh, my pleasure.
Okay.